Man is eminently a storyteller. His search for a purpose, a cause, an ideal, a mission, and the like is largely a search for a plot and pattern in the development of his life story, a story that is basically without meaning or pattern. This quote's from renowned philosopher and author Eric Hoffer. Now, I discovered this concept the way I imagine most epiphanies occur, through copious amounts of alcohol. My friends and I were downtown, and among the many, many topics that you would normally discuss in that context, one of the things we talked about was the idea that our lives, as these vastly unique and diverse plot lines, we're filmmakers, so we couldn't help ourselves. This idea, though, that our lives are in fact stories fascinated me. Now, the most common thought to stories are the fictional works that usually line shelves and e-reader lists, and my introduction to storytelling came from books as well. I was enamored with the Magic Tree House series when I was a kid, where two brother and sister would be sent off into the realms of time to see dinosaurs and pirates and ninjas. I would eventually mature to things like Calvin and Hobbes. Songs can be stories too. Have you ever heard of the ballad? I discovered this, much to my chagrin, through my mother's love of country music. And even though that's not my particular flavor, I was able to learn that if you listen to the lyrics, and I mean really listen, songs are usually stories of love and personal growth, overcoming unimaginable odds, that sort of thing. Over the years, my fascination for storytelling somewhat trailed off, but in high school, it rekindled itself when I became enamored with the theater. We performed works from Shakespeare and Arthur Miller, Oscar Wilde, these amazingly talented playwrights that would evoke story through words that would ultimately be performed. This was imagination brought to life. Shortly thereafter, I became interested in the actual image. I wanted to capture all of this lively theatrics. Photography is a medium that forces creativity because it necessitates a dense amount of emotion and story within a single frame. More than likely, you've seen some of these beautifully haunting images, stuff from Tiananmen Square, Iwo Jima, or even kitten photos. The natural progression for me, of course, was to become a filmmaker, and after I quit engineering school, that's exactly what I did. A new major, a new school, and now I get to create stories with moving images, specific diction, and precise manipulation that would put all of my ex-girlfriends to shame. And I can honestly say I've never been more fulfilled. So what am I talking about? Why are we even here discussing this? If we are on this path of perpetual self-discovery, as Eric Hoffer suggested, then we also need to tell stories. And regardless of if they are historical reflections of back in the day, or if they're creative fictions like the films that I get to make, we must all tell our stories. Most stories are constructed out of complete nothingness. They are built on the fabric of the void, where an entirely new world is shaped. This is our imagination. Amazing stories like Good Will Hunting, Little Miss Sunshine, Almost Famous, all of these were grown and harvested from this place. Stories nurture our imagination, and they're the simplest things we get to pass along. No one has a greater imagination and wonder than children. This isn't really a debatable point, it's just widely accepted. Their creativity can actually be enhanced if we pass along our stories to them, and they can be painful life lessons, joyous memories, or little imaginative fictions for bedtime, but the point is that they all make their eyes grow wide. Whatever we leave behind for generations to come usually define us. I always recall back to my brothers and I playing silly games whenever I get to see my little niece and nephew. And even though 3 boys meant that we were absolute hellions, the randomness that our minds usually drifted off into, and the randomness that I see in my niece and nephew, is poetic as it is adorable. Now that I'm an adult, by law, not by choice, I've realized that life actually moves way, way too fast, and there are many instances where I would love to just slow it down, fading away into an escape that I personally find through stories. You must also find your anchor for this, because you can't let your life run you away from sharing. There are also numerous distractions that we all face. More and more of them come across every day. We have to maintain a very active social calendar. We have family obligations, and every weekday, for most of us, there's WORK. All of these distractions of reality force us into a routine, and if it becomes a firm routine, that's where imagination will generally begin to suffer. Now, your daily ebb and flow are actually stories in their own right, and they can even become that pattern that we were originally talking about, or I was. But you have to demand freedom from this monotony. New challenges to take on, new interesting people to actually meet, and new inventive stories that we can either tell or consume. Therefore, we can't limit ourselves to the everyday experiences of our lives. Imagination is like a pier on the coast. If we abandon it, if it's not maintained, at one point in the future, it will become the dilapidated form of its younger self. Maintain your mind with stories that are both adventurous as they are imaginative. Seek them out, and you will find the nourishment that you actually need. Now, whenever the monotony has actually gotten me to the end of my rope, I go to church, and this is probably different than most of you. My temple is the cinema. Whenever I'm feeling down, whenever I'm in a funk or otherwise unbearable to all of my friends and colleagues, I go to the one place where I know I can get inspiration. As a tip, don't see Disney movies during matinee time. I also seek out adventure by going somewhere I've never been before. If I can manage it, I'll even leave the country for a week. I love to visit places that aren't normally meant for tourists because that means that I get to interact with the locals and learn from them. I get their stories, and in turn, I get to tell them my own. All of these personal anecdotes that I'm kind of throwing out at you, they're meant for me to actually pass them along. I'm trying to nourish your imagination and also creating a legacy. When you have a story to tell, post it on Facebook. Email it to your friends saying, hey, check out this amazing adventure that I just had. You can invite them to your own art show showcasing this event, or even talk to Eddie about doing your own Pecha. We will all be old news, relegated to the archives of time and ancestry. Leaving something lasting is the only thing that's paramount to creating a fulfilling legacy. If sharing stories allow us to last, sharing amazing stories will allow us to last forever, which is the ultimate way of determining our legacy. There's a whole universe filled with stories out there. Many of them are vibrantly colorful, emotion-laden plots. I would love for you to all have your own stories to add to this collection. Man is eminently a storyteller. I firmly believe this. So let's never, ever stop sharing our stories. Thank you.